one had kind of song structures as an experiment, and the other one was using ethnic musical instruments like Tibetan thigh bones, bicycle wheels, New Guinea headhunters drums, and so on, but using them in almost like mathematical formula and layers. So you applying modern systems music techniques to antique instruments to see what effects happened. So we decided to redo it, but look at it from a different perspective, as a magical ritual about orgasms and sexuality. So that's why we redid it with all the orgasms being real orgasms and so on.
And it's not a group, it's you?
No, it is a group of people.
Yeah.
But constantly it's Jen and I. The other people in the group change. Quite rapidly.
So it's a fluid, flexible collective of people. And one of the ideas was, after being in a group like TG with 4 people, always in the same 4 people, was that became quite oppressive, and I wanted to have some sort of vehicle that had more possibilities, where one minute it could do a pop song, and the next minute it could do some very abstract music, and the next minute a film soundtrack, and then a disco track, and then ballet music, that didn't have any set limits, that was capable of changing to fit different roles and different styles of music, in order to understand more about what all the different types of music actually do, how they function, whether they really need to exist or whether they exist just because people carry on doing them. And to do that you need to have a group set up where, as people come and go, the emphasis will change because of the skills they have. So if suddenly a virtuoso violinist appeared, then on the next Psychic TV record you would probably find lots of violin music, because we would make use of that fact for a while. Then when we found that we were bored with exploring violins, we'd probably get rid of that person and find someone who did something else. So the group is the sum total of who's in it, rather than the other way round, which is how it normally is. The music is usually the sum total. And the music has always been secondary to us. We don't have a favourite type of music anymore. We're more interested in the process of making music and how it functions and who it functions for, and its relationship with behaviour and society.
Yeah, but that's when we take a break and then we concentrate on doing events like today, visuals and tapes, and, well, I wouldn't say art events, but we do concentrate on other things, mixed media events, rather than just music. And then we once we've had that break, we go back into music and we start from scratch in a way.
Usually finding new people on the way, so that they affect what's possible again.
You need to have a constant turnover in a group of people for new ideas.
Or it gets very
And
boring.
new structures. You have to break the structures down and start again. Otherwise you'd become too content and just too, what's the word, stayed, really.
I think more groups are getting that way. The actual idea of having to have a fixed lineup in the more radical or the groups that think a bit more is becoming less and less important. People have names now for their project, and different people come and go, and sometimes they collaborate with each other. Lots of people that we've all worked with or who've worked with us, and they all move around in a kind of collective, and then usually decide on a particular line that they find more interesting. At this moment in time, I think it works better that the project is what's interesting, and not, that it's a continuous, constant number of people. Probably 10 or 15 hours now of material that we've done like that, but now we want to take it one step further and integrate it more completely with the live show, where it's the whole group, where there's more people playing and doing things, and where there's no separation between the image and the sound in the brain. If you're watching the image, the sound's going in. If you're listening, the image is going in, but the two things are very clear. We've gone through a phase of a kaleidoscope of effects. Now what we want to do is try and make very specific points to people without compromising the content, but actually make it more like statements, very simple, straightforward statements about situations or ideas.
When we play now as a music group, we play on the stage, and behind us we have the video screens, and hopefully we have 3 video screens, all projecting different images with televisions on each side, and even in the middle. And also, we were saying at the beginning that the point was not to look at us as people playing music, but to look at the visuals, and we just happened to be there doing a live soundtrack to the music.
Yes. In fact, it's not too much to see you on
There's been a phase where we were playing for practical reasons. We actually found that it just couldn't be accepted by promoters, for example, that people went along and just looked at it like a very large three-dimensional television experience. So we did go back to being a rock band and doing the rock band gestures even as well, and that worked quite well in that it seemed to relax the audience so that the videos and the films actually had more direct effect on them, which was surprising because we'd always tried to push the film and video straight at them and stand back. And one of the interesting things we found out was that if we pushed ourselves forward, the films and the videos actually seemed to be more powerful, which we never expected.
Yes.
So what we want to do now is build it into almost a sculptural structure, the whole stage and all the objects on it, so that even a speaker cabinet doesn't look like that, it looks like part of something larger, a big kinetic sculpture. And we can sometimes be almost invisible, and then sometimes we can be very visible, and actually try and find a balance between all the things that appear to affect people, so that they never know what's going to happen next, what sensation they're going to have next. They can suddenly relax and think, oh, I'm familiar with this, you know, he's being Mick Jagger or something. And then all of a sudden it can become very strange, very fast, and they'll be more susceptible to what you're trying to actually do, manipulate and make happen.
We are more into videos and visuals now. And we have lots of different filmmakers that are working with us on joint products and videos. And what we need now is just the finances to carry it even further.
So that we're not given any kind of aesthetic parameters or boundaries. And that way we can work on doing feature films too, and books, and lots of extra additional information. If you go to the event, one of the big problems is, even if you enjoy it or it's interesting, you go away and that's the end, it's finished. And you may have a cassette tape or you may have a Super 8 film, but it's not really the same. So we want to have people able to go away ultimately with a carrier bag full of extra information, booklets and images and videos and suggestions of action that mean that it's not over when they walk out, it actually begins when they walk out. And all we were was the introduction to it and the point where it began to happen. And that's far more interesting for us.
Yes.
That's why we kept the pictures quite abstract a lot of the time, for that reason. And why I think maybe it works better when they're not looking at them so consciously, when we are actually, that's probably the reason that when we were jumping around and being seen, the images were going in unconsciously, which was more effective, because then it mixes up with their own imagination, and that's why it might be an interesting thing to continue to explore. We're interested in what works rather than how it's described by other people. And all the things we do are just movements and stages in research. They're never finished. We don't ever consider one thing was the perfect version or the best or anything. You know, some of them appear to be more effective or more enjoyable sometimes, but they're all part of just the process of trying to understand what happens, what the interaction is between image, sound, behaviour and conditioning, and real life and artificial life, if you like, culture and reality.
Yes, in your videos...
Not really per se. We're interested in time. And the only point where time ends is when people die, which makes it interesting for that reason. And we've been exploring recently ideas to do with the nature of time, and that there, if you like, simply there's past time and present time and future time. And then there's a possibility of what you could call timelessness, a place without time, which can be death, but it could also just be the zone in your own mind and experience when you are actually liberated as if by death into a place where there are no normal rules and regulations, and you're actually free in the true sense. And we also are looking at the idea that if we're in present time now, we've been doing some research and it appears that most people argue about the past, about past time, or the argument is a result of an attitude which is a habit from the past. And it tends to be mainly from the past that friction occurs in relationships between people. And it's as if you can, while you're in present time, look at a problem and realise that in fact it's not in the same time zone as you're in, it's actually coming through, it's leaking through from a previous one. It's much easier to deal with because it's obviously less important because it's gone already. So it's easier to disengage from friction that way. And also that people should not just remain in present time, which is the other problem politically, that politics and control seem to exist mainly in present time. They deal with what's happening now, they control you now, they set up rules now. And that's why idealism is about future time and philosophy and culture. And it could be that culture is the sort of bridge through away from those two zones into a much more creative zone. So we're looking at the whole idea of time and how it operates in different ways. And obviously the timeless zone is if you like, the place you aim to end up eventually, but while you're still in present time as well. So you can be alive now, but aware of the possibility of timelessness. And that's about as near as you get to being free. It also destroys the fear of ending as well, because timelessness can't have an end.
In one way.
And I think it's more inspired by technology.
Technology?
Yeah. And mathematics and Western society and the way it's actually built. Just observing the behaviour on the street, the education system, the class system, the political system, the fact that all these things are aimed at pushing you back in to some point. And if you try and think, what is that point is just now. Because as long as you can be seen to be in one spot, you can be manipulated. But if you're fragmented and you appear to be everywhere, they can only stop bits of you from being creative or growing, evolving. I think it's very much... We were talking to, of all things, a Polish taxi driver on the way to the airport, and he said that for about 10,000 years change occurred very slowly in society. And then in the last 20, 30 years, as much change has happened as in the first 10,000 years, and that most people refuse to try and go with the change. They try to stand back. It's very difficult to exist with that acceleration of change, and that is one of the great problems. And the people who will survive and mutate and evolve are the ones who accept change as a permanent state. That's maybe why even the group is in a state of permanent change. Although we hadn't planned it for those reasons, we could understand what he meant. And I think that sounds as well almost like an Eastern philosophical statement, but it isn't. It's actually an observation of what's happening. I don't think there is a source anymore. I think maybe everything is just coming back together and becoming an obvious fact of life. We're all trapped in the same bodies, and we're all trapped in the situation of trying to understand what it is to be alive, which is a very peculiar thing to do. And it's the most confusing and exhilarating experience to be alive. And I think most people are trained not to realise that by everything that happens to them from the moment they're born, for obvious reasons. The people at the top of any pyramid of control want to stay at the top. So once we're born, it's in their interest to keep us as subservient and as stupid as possible, so that we don't threaten them. We're just treated like coal or wood or paper or oil. We're just a resource for the people who administer control. We're not seen as human beings. And the reason that education and health services in England are being allowed to decay is because there is no longer a need for a large, healthy workforce. That's the real reason. That's the real reason people are allowed access to more and more drugs that stop them from worrying about time. The reason heroin is so popular is because it stops time. That's what it does. Even Burroughs, when he was writing, said when he took morphine he could stare at his foot for 12 hours and not be bored. That's stopping time. And that's the real thing that's going on. The people who are at the top, who administer control, don't need lots and lots of human beings anymore. They're actually in the way. They're a nuisance. And they have to be looked after and fed like cattle or sheep do, It's a problem for them, because they're not really interested. And that's the other battle that has to be fought, is to make those people that are just treated like animals have self-respect again and care again about themselves and have self-esteem again, so that they can inspire each other and themselves to grow and evolve anyway, regardless of who's at the top.
Mhm.